Welcome to Unity Inspired Living. Our community began in 1989 as a small worldwide Unity book study group, and we've continued the momentum as an ever-evolving spiritual community. Each Sunday, you will find dynamic thought leaders delivering inspiring messages and talented musicians sharing sound healing through their melody. Here, we embrace ancient spiritual traditions, universal truths, and emerging wisdom. Let's check out this Sunday message. We're so grateful you've joined us.
And as we return to the room, let's welcome again Tom Bonacci. Thank you, Tom, for being here.
Good morning, everyone. Well, thank you for all the kind words, and it's always a blessing and a privilege to be with you. I do want to say something about this rewriting. Every time you share a story about an event in your life, you rewrite it. The art of rewriting or retelling or even rehearing, and if you really wanted to get technical, when it comes to sacred literature, we call it rescripturing. Interpretations, homilies, commentaries, even gossip is rewriting. That's why there's a strong justice component to retelling, rewriting, respeaking, rescripturing, anything. Because how you speak about someone is as important as the person you're speaking to. In rewriting, respeaking, retelling, we make someone present. You can see that what oppressors and tyrants do, who are ultimately very, very weak people, they always have to have an enemy to have an identity. And so they usually single out people for intense criticism and constantly retelling the rhetoric, the means another human being. What sometimes we forget is in the process of demeaning another person, that gives us the false illusion that we're becoming strong. We're actually becoming weaker. Because you never have identity through enemy or purpose through conflict. You always have identity through self-discovery. By now, you probably have figured out that the more you go to discover the story of yourself, the more there is to find. I always said that if you lived 15 minutes, it would take a lifetime to uncover the significance of the 15 minutes. Because this is the July 4th weekend, so to speak, I thought it might be good to talk about freedom and liberation. So in the back of the room, there's a little packet, if you will, that summarizes this particular reflection. You know, I don't follow them exactly, so they're meant to be summations afterwards. And you can also find them, I believe, online. And I entitled it, So What is Freedom Anyway? And there are 5 things that I would like to say about the elements of freedom. Now let's first of all expand the word freedom. There's freedom, there's liberation, there's salvation and redemption and release. So if you take that word, freedom, and put it back into the great traditions of the world, you discover words like release, salvation, redemption, liberation, and freedom. So in different cultures in different parts of the world, this idea of what it is to be free, what it is to be liberated, what it is to be released, what it is to be saved, and what it is to be redeemed is very, very rich and powerful. In the first instance, you and I might think that we're free if we're free from something. Once I had a cockatiel, you know, those beautiful little birds. He was as cute as a button and as dumb as a brick. He was always very tame and very gentle from the time he was a baby. He was hysterically funny. He loved to sing, followed you around the house, but he had an awful habit. He would fly into his cage and try to get out. Now, there was no door in the cage. I never caged him in. It was just his private space. So he would fly in the cage, walk over in the perch, and fight to get out. And I would go up to him and say, get on my finger, come out through the door, see you're free. He'd fly back in and try to get out. Sometimes we spend our entire lives trying to be free from something and thinking that's what it means to be free. And then one day I visited a prisoner in jail who was behind bars. And the door was locked, and the fence around the compound was electrified. And he shared with me his freedom. That whenever he saw a light coming through a crack, or maybe the sun within the sky, or the stars within the night, somehow that his soul was in tune with the universe. Many of us can be walking around enslaved because we're trying to be free from something. There's always something in our life we don't want. Sometimes there's always something in our life that we do want. We find ourselves trapped between what we don't want and what we do want. And so we're not free. We're busy being possessed by something as we seek to be free from something. What gives us true freedom is when we're free for someone, for some greater purpose than ourselves. One man put it to me this way: I retired from my job and felt trapped. I no longer knew who I was. I had all this free time that I always craved. Now that I have it, what do I do with it? Who am I? And I simply said to him, what does your heart invite you to do? What does your soul invite you to be? What is the light within you that's longing to shine? I can't do that. What will people think? Do people pay your gas bill? Do people pay your electric bill? Do people pay your rent? Rest assured, the people around you truly need you to be yourself. Number 2, there's a word out there that causes all kind of problems for certain politicians. And since it causes all kind of problems for certain politicians, I've committed myself to use the word as frequently as I can. Inclusivity. Imagine there are some powerful people who get nervous when you talk about inclusivity. You're all friends here. Maybe you need to be investigated. What do you mean we're all friends here? No one's a stranger when you come through the door. But as you know, we can come through a door and be welcomed by one another and be perfect strangers to ourselves. Deep in the probing of the spirituality of inclusion is the very, very powerful understanding that sometimes we hide from ourselves. Sometimes we're afraid to be ourselves. We're afraid to think what we think, feel what we feel, believe what we believe. Because somebody said, what if I feel something, think something, and believe something that's wrong? It will have been the result of great effort. It means you took a chance. It means you took a risk. And the Buddha said, if you come to understand that something you believe is wrong, change what you believe. Change what you think. Get in touch with what you really feel. Unless you have the particular gift of being infallible in everything. And have you ever met anybody who knows everything about everything? They're always unhappy. Especially if you don't comply and bow down to their infallible truth. Not only can we hide from the world and need to let our light shine, we can hide from ourselves. We can actually be afraid of ourselves. I shared with you 1,000 times this little story. But one day when I was sitting with my therapist, she said, Tom, there's someone I want you to meet. I said, who? She said, you. I said, over my dead body. So we took it step by step and stage by stage. 3. As you know, June is Pride Month for many people. And in San Francisco, there was a great debate in the Pride community. Shall we play or resist? Shall we be serious with the political reality of resistance and stand up for what is right, good, true, and beautiful, or shall we play in the street? And something fabulous happened. The leaders of Pride said, hope is resistance, joy is resistance, dancing in the street is resistance. You saw it in Gaza a couple months ago. That gorgeous photograph that broke your heart of 2 little boys playing with some broken toys in the midst of the rubble. Bombs going off in the background, smoke going up into the air, blood poured out into the street, destruction everywhere, and 2 little boys took broken toys and began to play. Because deep in the heart of resistance is not violence against someone, but self-possession, the ability to be resilient and the ability to respond creatively even in the midst of tragedy. Think of the history of all peoples who have ever been oppressed. It's where profound music, art, and culture is born. Third, or fourth, if you would truly like to be free, then you have to follow in the footsteps of one of the greatest people that ever lived, or may have lived, or may have been invented, Socrates. In the writings of Plato, who said the unexamined life is not worth living. And one of the ways to examine life is to write in a journal, to speak with a spiritual director, to share with a friend. It's the rewriting, it's the rethinking, it's the reconsidering, it's entering into the depth of mind, heart, and soul. One day somebody came up to me and said, I heard a lot about you. Said, I could tell you a few things. I know more about me than you might think. You come to a point in life when you're no longer simply ashamed of some of the things you did, or heartbroken over some of the things you didn't do. You now grow in compassion because you know what it's like. In my profession, because of certain people will come to me for a confession, to share with me the shame, the guilt, the failure, and the sins in their lives. And oftentimes they're broken and contrite. And I say to them, we do this together. How important it is to forgive. How important it is to be set free with compassion. Sometimes we say, I want to be optimistic, so I'm not going to pay any attention to the brokenness in my life. But the brokenness in our lives is what gives us the sense of understanding of other people. And know what it's like. If you know what it's like to fail, you know what it's like to be inconsistent, then think of how valuable you are to other people who get in touch with their failure, their shame, and their brokenness. It's how friendships are born. And finally, I would like to share with you the fifth element of what we might mean by what it is to be free, liberated, saved, redeemed, released. And it's to be present to another and present to self. I used to think the self-knowledge was being present to the self, but it isn't. Self-knowledge is a lot of work. So I look back into my life and I try to remember certain wonderful people in my life, and what did they do? They were present. I think of my mother when I was a little child, how many hours she spent simply holding me, or how many hours she spent sitting in the chair while I played, or how many hours she spent sitting in the chair while I destroyed everything in sight and discovered the world. She was simply present. And if you walked into the room, you would say, why is that woman doing nothing? But if you've ever been present to another person, next to a hospital bed, next to a deathbed, next to a cradle, or simply watch little children discover the world, to be present to them. You become a place that's an anchor within their lives. They will run back to you every once in a while and hug you, and then go out and do more damage, or more creativity, or more insight into the world. When I lived on campus, sometimes students would just show up and sit in a chair. Can I get you something, John? No. Do you need anything? No. Is it okay if I just sit here? Oh, it's more than okay. To be at peace. But then I read something that touched my heart. What is it to be present to yourself? To be calm with yourself. To simply be. And sometimes when I quiet myself down and I'm present to myself and become present to the world around me, the world explodes with creativity, beauty, splendor, insight, and inspiration. Even when things are difficult. One day I heard two people having a conversation. And one person cursed at another. Got angry about something. And the person to whom they got angry simply was present, said nothing, and didn't react. And the one who cursed said, I can't believe I said that. I'm so sorry. Where did that come from? And notice how the outburst invites a reconsideration of what's going on in the heart. The friend who stayed quiet was not a victim, did not absorb the insult, but held it with great love. My friend is in pain. Sometimes if we don't react, if we don't respond, if we hold the center, enter into the moment, the other person can hear what they don't want to say and remember what their soul longs to sing. So don't sit around waiting for freedom to come in the mail. Don't sit around waiting for freedom to come by the circumstances of life changing. Claim the freedom and the dignity that is within you right here, right now. See the light that shines in the darkness. Hear the song that sings in the silence. Hear the silence that sings in the song. Discover the you who lives in the moment. And certainly be sure of my love. Be at peace. Be at deep peace.